Welcome back to another episode of the Black Shoe Diaries recap show. What a game, Tim. What a game. First and foremost, Happy New Year. Sorry,
Same to you.
Audio playing. Happy New Year. Penn State wins the Fiesta Bowl, 31-14. We talk about everything. Just general thoughts, Tim, as Penn State is moving on to the college football playoff semifinal.
Just general thoughts. I guess I was annoyed that the game ended up being more of a nail biter than it should have been, considering how fast of a start Penn State got off to, getting up 14-zip early on, and then they were just keeping Ashton Jeanty in check, and they forced the fumble, which Sakee Wheatley recovers, and then a couple plays later, Drew Aller in just a boneheaded decision to pull the ball away from Nick Singleton last second, fumbles it in the process.
He struggled with that yesterday, which is annoying.
Yeah, we'll get into it, but there were, and I mean, unfortunately, I'm going to get a lesser grade from me in my position grades than he otherwise probably would have, just for some really bad decision making on read options. But yeah, so he fumbled it away, and I mean, there was a chance. They had a real chance to go up 21-zip right there before the first quarter was even over and effectively put that game away. I mean, I just could not see Boise coming back from a 21-0 deficit with the way they play and just, the way Penn State was just gashing them. And also,
I will say, as far as that fumble goes, and this is like it definitely is a spin zone, but I was like, I didn't mind it. Like, things were going a little bit too well for Penn State at that point after, getting just like the luckiest of fumbles. How Kobe King was able to knock that ball out of Jeanty, and how he was able to stay in bounds, and how Sakee Wheatley could just catch it so cleanly on the sideline. So I didn't mind the Aller fumble, all things considered. And yes, that's a spin zone. Of course, I'd rather Penn State keep it. But things were just, as you said before, I mean, Penn State came firing on all cylinders out of the gate. So it was like, we had our good luck. It was bound, something bad was going to happen eventually. So didn't necessarily mind it there.
Well, yeah. So, but they really just killed whatever, all the momentum Penn State seemed to have at that point. And in Boise State, eventually I don't think what happened on that drive, but later on they did score, make it a 14-7 game, and we had ourselves a ball game for a while until late fourth quarter when Nick Singleton put it on ice, but his season-long 58-yard touchdown run. But, yeah, I think just the biggest thing, obviously, look, it's a win. I'm happy. Overall, the team played pretty well, especially on defense. Did a great job keeping Ashton Jeanty in check at the step. He had 111 yards and 30 carries, only a 3.5 average. Didn't get a touchdown. Interestingly enough, his longest run, his 26-yard run, came in a 3rd and 21 situation where Boise was backed up at their own 10-yard line. And we're sitting here thinking, all right, maybe, we'll forcing the punt from their own end zone. And it seemed like Penn State was thinking they were going to come out throwing too. And but that was a smart call on
it was the series after Boise had I think it was the 3rd and 25 when they threw the interception to Wheatley. So I think a little bit of like rope-a-dope there where you trick Penn State into thinking that you're going to probably take another deep shot. And it was a nice play call. Let's actually talk about let's start with the defense, because as you said before, and as we're talking about Jeanty, it was very clear from the very beginning that Penn State was going to, right? We talked about how aggressive are they going to be with stopping Jeanty, right? Is it 7 men in the box? Are you generally, you're definitely going to focus a little bit more on stopping the run, but how aggressive are you going to be in that? Penn State came in with 5 defensive linemen. They had the normal starters of Carter, Deny, Devon, Zane Durant, and then they also had a Vanover in there for the opening series, or at least the opening couple plays. So Penn State from the get-go was saying, we are not going to let Ashton Jeanty stop us or beat us. And like you said, I mean, he averaged 3.5 yards a carry, so he certainly did not do that, did not find the end zone at all. Boise State made sure to get him over 100 yards at the end, despite being down 17. They were running the ball at the end, which, okay.
They're trying to go for Barry Sanders' single season record.
It's like, hey, congrats for that. Overall, though, what were your thoughts on Genty and what Penn State did to stop him? It's weird when you watch a Boise State game without like a rooting interest. Like, as I think you and I, you just see like a Boise State game and you're like, oh yeah, I'll turn that on, watch him play like Nevada or something. I will say, even though Penn State deserves a ton of credit for how they tackled and how they stopped him, but he's legit. Like, anyone who's giving him flack for only having 3.5 yards or whatever, like, just as a Penn State fan, watching him anytime that he got the ball was like not your heart stops, but I imagine that Boise State fans feel like how Penn State fans felt when Saquon Barkley got the ball, where it's just like you give him the ball and he's gonna be able to find some sort of hole. Obviously, that didn't happen a ton last night for him, but I just come away from that game just with even more respect for him than I had going into it, which was a lot.
Oh yeah, I mean, all the credit in the world to Ashton Genty. There's a reason why he it was right up there with Travis Hunter as a Heisman Trophy front runner, and some people argue he should have won the Heisman.
Yeah.
And I guess there's a case to be made for that. But that being said, I mean, Penn State came out the right game plan. I think you and I talked about in the preview show. Just basically sell out to stop Genty, force Maddox Madsen in the passing game to try to beat you.
Who had not a bad game. Not a bad game.
Yeah, it's a good game, and I'm sure we'll get into that some more. But to go on Genty, look, he was still tough to bring down. I mean, they held him in check, but it took like 2 or 3 Nittany Lions to bring him down every time, and it was definitely wearing a bit on the defense towards the end. But obviously you're talking about this is the close. They had the only other like Big Ten caliber defensive front they went up against was Oregon earlier in the season, and that was an Oregon team that was still kind of finding themselves a bit.
Yeah.
They're here going up against a seasoned, been through it all Penn State front seven. That was, they knew what the game plan was going to be from Boise, which is to just pound the rock with Ashton Genty and try and stop us. And Penn State was like, all right, game on. We'll try and stop you. And they did. But, kudos to him. I think he'll be a top, top half of the first round pick. And, again, and think about this too. In the NFL, he's going to, obviously the level of parity is, the talent between the teams is much more even compared to college football. So I think he's going to be a guy who should, I think he'll make some fantasy owners happy on Sundays and whichever team's fans he, plays for. So
it was an interesting game though, just because, Penn State comes out, you couldn't have asked for a better start, right? That opening drive for Boise, I think it was Genty had 4 yards on 3 carries, end up, missing that field goal, which I still don't know if it was tipped or not, if it was just completely shanked, but just a dreadful field goal attempt from the Boise kicker, who then
I think he shanked it, Pat. I watched it again. I thought watching it initially, I thought it was blocked or partially blocked, but no, he just he shanked that. I think maybe he was afraid of the block. I don't know what happened, but good Lord, it was just a bad shank.
Certainly a bad kick either way. But as far as Penn State goes, right, you get a stop. You come out on offense and you run the ball down their throats, and Allard's able to find Tyler Warren in the end zone. You go up 7-0. You get another stop defensively. And once again, you have Allard hitting Amari Evans deep, just with how many guys in college football can throw that type of ball? There just aren't that many people. Penn State goes at 14-0. And, I think we all thought that the route was going to be on. And it was just a weird game though, because, and we kind of talked about this. I think we talked about this. Sometimes I forget if it's like our private conversations or just other conversations that I have versus what I say on the podcast. But it was interesting that Penn State goes up 14-0. You kind of put Boise State in a spot where there's still a ton of time left in the game. So they obviously ran the ball with Genty still, but They opened it up a little bit, and almost kind of messes with what exactly Penn State wants to do, because we kind of talked about it there with that the 3rd and 21 that he picked up the 26 yards on, that you put Boise State in these passing situations, and that is almost a benefit to them, right? If they're able to be in like a 3rd and 8 or something where the Penn State defense can't necessarily stack the box, and that almost helps Genty a little bit. So not to say that I think the 14-0 start was bad by any stretch of the imagination. You always want to be up 14-0 as opposed to 7-0 or 0-0. But it did kind of change how Penn State's defense had to defend Boise, because Boise was going to be doing different things, just with how the game was going. I've seen once again, I go back to just like being a weird game. I don't really know where I want to go with this, but you do position grades, but just like an overall, like, how did you feel about that game as far as Penn State goes? I think that I lean on the side of like, I don't want to say it wasn't as close as the score indicated, because Penn State did win by 17 points and they covered, but it just watching the game, it felt like Penn State was always mostly in control, I want to say. And I know that could be just benefit of hindsight, but how did you feel? Were you ever like really worried during the game, even when it was 17-14 at one point, and even when Boise State scored that touchdown that ended up getting called back for hands to the face, or kind of where were you at during the game as far as your confidence level?
I was certainly concerned when, it was, when it was 17-14, and just, the way Penn State's offense has been playing at that point, it was just extremely frustrating to see they were focused more on having, on Drew Aller throwing instead of just, going back to what was working. I mean, just pounding the rock. I mean, there were definitely times though where I was screaming at the TV, to run the damn ball. I'm thinking of one situation. There was 2nd and 1, and they have Drew Aller drop back and just throw a deep ball, which, could have been intercepted potentially.
Yeah, I think I remember that
one. I think that drive actually did end. I think that's the drive that ended in a touchdown pass to Tyler Warren ultimately. But I just remember thinking to myself, like, just run the damn. But it's 2nd and 1. Like, look, I understand taking a deep shot at some point to catch him off guard, but 2nd and 1, like, just get the first down. Just you're running the ball real well. Just move the chains.
Even after the Saki Wheatley interception, you have 3rd and 1, and they run a play action to try to hit. I assume Warren was probably the main target on that. I think that's who Drew ended up throwing it to. But it was just one of those, you're up 10. There's like 13 minutes left in the game. You don't even necessarily need points on the drive, but hey, like the Boise offense was having some sustained drives, but at the very least, you want to give your defense a chance to, catch their breath, that type of thing.
Right. Yeah.
And even, I guess this is where we can kind of talk about Kolonicki's play calling. Even in the beginning of the game, when it was 14-0 in Penn State after the, I think it was 14-0 at that point. Maybe it was 14-7. When they had Tyler Warren, it's 3rd and 3. They have Tyler Warren go under center, snaps the ball, tosses it back to Drew, who then tried to hit Warren, kind of like on a reverse. She's like, is that really where we need to get cute? And it is just the little things like that you get right against a Boise State you can get away with. I think back to the SMU game when they had the 4th and 1 of the 19 and they go for it, which I hated in the moment, and then when they didn't get it, certainly hated it even more. It's just like the little things like that where when Nick I guess Singleton kind of needed some time to get going because his averages are a little skewed by the 58-yard touchdown run, but Catron the entire night it felt like you could get 6 yards from whenever you wanted to. Allen finished with 134 yards on 17 carries, so his average 7.9 yards per carry, and that doesn't even include his crazy long run that got called back due to a Wormley holding call. So just I guess that's kind of where I come from with. I wasn't exactly ever worried and felt like Penn State was the better team. It's just little issues with play calling that kind of prevented them from really opening that game open. Are you kind of on that same wavelength with Kolonicki and just, as you said, run the damn ball? Like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, I just felt he got a little too cute with some of the play, like just some of those trick plays, the display was calling, like, which would have been those are plays I think that are appropriate if, say, the run game is getting stifled and you're down, a couple score. You just need to desperately get something going, which, they found themselves in those situations against, like I'm thinking USC as an example, where they run that trick play where Tyler Warren catches the touchdown pass that he originally snapped to Bo Pribula, threw it to Aller, throws it to Warren. That would be appropriate when you're in a situation like that where you're down a couple touchdowns and you need a spark. They didn't need that. They just needed to just stick to the fundamentals. Like the simple things are working for them. Just either running at them or running off tackle. I mean, run blocking was pretty solid overall. I mean, I think I'm sure Franklin probably got on the headset and was, yelling at Kolnicki to just run the damn ball. But it was definitely I certainly would expect it a little better from a guy who I think is a brilliant coordinator. Who generally has a good feel for the flow of the game and can adjust. But yeah, it was almost like he was committed to using those tricks no matter what, which was baffling to me. I'd say, I mean, it's crazy I'm saying it. I mean, I guess aside from maybe the Ohio State loss, this is probably like maybe the worst called game I can think of from Kolnicki this season.
Yeah, I mean, I can't, so many other games. Yeah, I mean, I would probably agree with that. How'd you feel about Drew Aller? It's, as always, the discourse on him is interesting. I feel like that was kind of I don't want to say like the not the perfect Drew Aller game, but kind of encompasses like everything about him, where you have, even the first touchdown, like every single one of his touchdown throws was like just absolutely incredible. Like the touchdown, the first one to Tyler Warren in the back of the end zone, like that's just a perfectly placed ball where either Tyler Warren catches that or it sails out of bounds. Obviously the deep shot to Amari Evans, like there's very few, not even quarterbacks in college, just like human beings in the world that can make that throw. Even getting the ball to Tyler Warren on his last touchdown pass with the blitz coming, and once again throwing that up where it's like only Tyler Warren's going to be able to get that ball. But yet was off a little bit. Ended up 13-25 for only 171 yards. Did have those 3 touchdowns, but ended with a QBR of 45, which is super low. And I don't necessarily love the QBR stat, but it generally gives you like a decent idea of what a quarterback does. What did you think of Drew's play? Because it was very much a hot and cold performance. I would say mostly hot, but hot and cold performance.
It's funny. I was I guess without spoiling it, I'm giving him like the lowest grade possible for a quarterback who threw for 3 touchdowns in a game, just because just some of the decision making. I'm just thinking back to the one that led to a fumble, and just he also had there was some other play like where he made a poor read on the read option and like either kept it himself or would hand out, one of
the last drives he lost.
There's also, and yes, he wasn't, and I'll say obviously his completion rate, wasn't very good. Part of that is due to drops from the receivers and from Tyler Warren.
Some of those,
but he also did throw some high balls, which tough to catch. So
and even like the Amari Evans drop, which would have been a touchdown, like that's a really tough catch, and one that he did make one of those catches, his second or Drew's second touchdown.
I actually had no problem with that throw. That was in the right spot. It was intended to be like, okay, either Omari makes a tough catch or it's just an incompletion. So,
but even Trey Wallace had a drop then, like right after that, and I know people, on Twitter at halftime, it was like, Drew didn't have these drops. Those are tough catches. Like that's not a Julian Fleming against Wisconsin, just like wide open drop or something over the middle of the field. Like those are really tough balls no matter what. And even the Tyler Warren one, I know people said, right, most of the time Tyler Warren makes that. It was like I don't remember what it was. It was a third down. Tyler Warren's running like a short little post, had him open, and Drew kind of threw it a little bit high and behind him. He got his hands on it, but that's again, it encapsulates what Drew Allure is, where he can make these incredible throws and he has crazy arm strength and you just never know where you're going to get. He can also be like just like a tick or two off when it comes to his accuracy. And it's kind of why he's, coming back next year, because I think that think that he would be a first round pick. I think he would end up being that third quarterback, and there would be some team that would, like the Rams or somebody would be like, all right, we have Stafford. We'll take Drew here because it's basically a top 10 upside pick. Let him sit for a year or two and then play. But it's why he's coming back next year, just because he is. You see the falters when he over the full course of a game. So
there's still some work that can be done. Yeah. I mean, overall, look, he's had a pretty good year. I mean, he's vastly improved from last year overall. I'm not trying to, take away from what he's accomplished this year. I mean, this was, not one of his better games yesterday, even though he did, to his credit, throw 3 touchdowns. So you got to tip your hat to that. He did throw some. I guess he did complete ones he absolutely had to complete. But we would like to see it's more just kind of some of the decision making on the read options. Really, I think grinded my gears. Which I knew he was capable of better than that.
Certainly. And we'll also give credit to the Boise State defensive line. They came in with, I think, 51 sacks, and they were aggressive as all hell. They got 4. I mean, they were really good again, and I think that played a part in Drew's, I don't want to say struggles, but some of the inaccurate throws, right? You speed them up, you kind of mess with timing in that sense, get them off base. So I mean, it's funny. Boise State loses by 17, but I thought that overall they played, I mean, just as bad as well as you could hope for. I mean, the only thing they really probably wanted or missed or couldn't get was that Genty home run, right? If you take away the Nick Singleton 50-yard rush and you give it to Genty has a 50-yard rush, it's it looks like a different game. So just credit to Boise State. I mean, I will say that they were better than I thought, and they were even able to move the ball decently well. I mean, they had 412 yards. Now, some of that did come during like garbage time in the fourth quarter when Penn State was even in more bend but don't break. But they were really in bend but don't break for much of the game. Tim, just overall thoughts on Maddox Madsen, because I was super impressed with him. I mean, especially in the he started forcing the ball a little bit in the second half, but I know at some point in the second half he was like 6 for 6 and just looked really clean and was just making good decisions. And Boise State's wide receivers, they still don't have anyone super scary, but they were making tough catches all night. So just overall thoughts on the Boise State offense outside of Genty.
I'll say the passing game they did better than I thought they would. I got to give credit to their offensive coordinator, Dirk Cutter. He drew up some. They drew up a lot of good play actions for rolling Madsen out of the pocket and buying time for someone to get open. They didn't throw a bunch of even though they hit a couple of deeper balls, but it was also just a lot of like 10, 15-yard type gains to move the chains. A lot of good intermediate stuff. Yeah, like they were. I think it took Tom Allen a little time to adjust to it, but because they're so focused on just shutting down the run game, keeping Ashton Genty in check, and so Boise wisely decides, all right, we're gonna they wants to beat you for the air. All right, we'll give it a shot. But I do think but I think that's also what Penn State wanted, was for Boise to try to beat them through the air. And yeah, they had some success, but ultimately, I mean, Penn State did get 3 interceptions, and they weren't Boise. They're not a team that can, unlike say SMU, they're not a team that relies on an explosive passing attack. I mean, their explosions come on the ground of Genty. So, you took away their most explosive offensive player and forced everyone else to have to step up their game big time. And Max Madsen, credit to him. He definitely he had some moxie. I don't know, we like to throw that word around here as Penn Staters.
He's had some moxie. He has to have some moxie. That's just,
yeah, you do exactly. I had some moxie. He did a good job keeping them in the game, keeping them in it until the very end, basically. And but I think it was still the right game plan to try to shut Genty down. If that means giving up 300 plus yards for the air, so be it. I mean, look at the scoreboard. They don't put up 14 points.
No, it was clear what they wanted to do, and I think that they being Tom Allen and the Penn State defense was, one, do not let Ashton Genty beat you. Like, no matter what, cannot let him get going. And then secondly was nothing deep. Give Boise these 8 to 17 yard intermediate routes, make them work for it, and even like some of those drives in like the middle of the third quarter, late third quarter, early fourth quarter, where Boise was moving it through the air like decently well. A lot of it was like 3rd and 5, and then they'd get like 7. It'd be 2nd and 8, and they would get like 4 or 5. So Penn State was just doing a good job of making them work to get everything and just bleeding that clock, which is funny to think about. Like in a passing attack, that's what you want to do. But
they just had like that one bust. It was a one busted coverage that led to a touchdown. I remember.
Yeah, which I was listening to, which was it this morning? Cover 3, or maybe it was Andy and Ari, the On 3 podcast. But one of them, they did talk about it, and kind of made me think that Ohio State had success with a play that was very similar to that, kind of like a play action, like roll to one side and then hit back on the other side. And that's kind of exactly what Boise did with their tight end on the busted coverage. So hopefully Penn State, gets that really figured out, because I'm sure it's something that whoever wins this upcoming Georgia Notre Dame game we'll see on film, and we'll try to hit as well. But no, I think all things considered, really nice game from the Penn State defense. Just looking over some stats here, Denai Denison 2.5 tackles for loss and a sack. I mean, Vanover 2 tackles for loss and a sack. Boise State fans, by the way, were not happy with Denai Denison. He had the pot shot on, and let's call it what it is. It was a dirty hit.
It was a cheap shot. I mean, it was like
on Genty. They got mad over the Mets and roughing the passer, which that was just. I mean, I didn't necessarily think that was a dirty shot, but I mean, all is fair in love and war and college football, right? You get an interception like that, and Denai's in that game, and you just see Genty right there. You're like, you know what? I'm just gonna.
But it was dumb, though. I mean, they would have had the ball at midfield. Probably could have put some, at least tacked on another field goal, and instead, it backs them up like, 20 yards or so. Yeah. So and that drive ended up stalling. So I mean, or worst case, you're at least maybe you can try to pin them in near their own end zone, even if you don't get points out of it. So
do you want to give shout out, speaking of pinning in the end zone, Riley Thompson, other than that one really badly shanked punt, just like by far his best punting game. He had a long of 63 that like the Penn State ended up rolling into the end zone, because I don't even think the Penn State coverage team thought that he could kick that far. So just a quick shout out to Riley Thompson. But anyway, to get back to the defense, so nice game from Amin Vanover, Dennis Sutton, Jalen Reed, as always, had a good game too. We had some interceptions from Wheatley, Tyrese Mills, Zion Tracy. Let's talk about Abdul Carter, Tim. I think it's time. So Abdul gets hurt in the. I think that was the first quarter, right? That wasn't the second quarter. I think it was the first. Which I won't lie. When I was watching the game, I feel like just before that, Genty had. I think it was his second fumble that. I don't remember exactly what. I just know that there was a point where I thought that Genty was hurt because they took him off the field, and they showed the blue tent, and I was like, oh, Genty's going in the blue tent. I don't celebrate injuries here, but I will say when they showed that, I thought it was Genty going in the blue tent, and when they were like, oh, it's Abdul Carter, I was like, all right, don't love that. So as always, information is scarce on what exactly went wrong. It seemed like it was obviously his left arm. Some people are saying it was a wrist. Some people are saying then it turned into an elbow, maybe a shoulder or a bicep.
I read bicep was what I read, but
it certainly seemed like
some kind of air cast or something on his arm. When he came out, for the second half, there was some kind of cast.
I know I saw someone on Twitter say that there was a cast. When everything else that I saw of him after the game, I didn't think it just looked like a compression sleeve to me. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe it's not it's hard to tell, I guess, but.
Either way, so James Franklin was on College Gaming this morning, and Daniel Gallen of who's Lions 24/7. He tweeted out what James Franklin said when asked about the status of Abdul Carter. He said, "Abdul's going to do everything in his power to try to get back. If he's able to go, I know he'll go. We'll get him checked out and make sure everything's okay. I just saw him walking from breakfast, and he looks great, and his attitude is great. but I just don't have a ton of information for you right now. We'll get back and get some information, find out quickly. The little extra time helps too. So not a whole lot coming from James, and it probably is a situation of that they don't actually know. It's tough to talk about injuries and do we think he play? Do we think he plays? Don't we think he plays? Like, we have no freaking idea. We don't even know what the injury is. It could be a bicep, could be a shoulder, could be an elbow. We don't really know. I think it's to play like positive, negative. It's a positive that he was on the bike during the game warming up. Seemed like he maybe wanted to give it a go. I don't know if he didn't feel comfortable enough to give it a go, or Penn State didn't want to give it a go. I do disagree with the notion. Like, it's weird he kept his pads on. I disagree with the notion that I saw some Penn State fans being like they're saving him for the Orange Bowl, or like he kept his pads on to be like in an emergency he could play. It wasn't like Penn State was blowing out Boise State the entire game. Like, when it was 17-14, I don't think James Franklin you're necessarily like thinking like, oh, we have Abdul for the Orange Bowl, let's keep him out still. If he was healthy enough to play against Boise, he would have played. I think that's pretty black and white when a game's like that. So I don't know. I think I'm clearly not very good with injuries, because I didn't think that Aller in any way, shape, or form was going to be able to play against Ohio State, and he did. So I don't know. Defensive ends, and it's a shoulder or an arm or something, is a little bit different. So I don't know, but it's certainly a damper on the win. I will say that Penn State's, let's be honest, best player is hurt and now in question for the Orange Bowl. But Tim, just not great, not great at all.
No, and I'm pulling up from our Slack channel here. Look. Yeah, so a former colleague of ours just knows knows someone who's in the know, or knows someone who knows someone who's in the know.
Can we share this? I don't.
I mean, it's not. I mean, it's not like like specific, but just there was Penn State was pretty concerned about Abdul. We'll say that's basically as of last night. That's take what you will with that. It's not obviously, look, we got a whole week before the Orange Bowl, and hopefully whatever it was, it improves quickly, and hopefully Abdul and the staff feel okay about him playing next week. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, nobody has the answers right now, and I think even if it's a day-to-day type thing, like let's just say, like I've seen some people say like a sprain or an AC joint sprain or whatever. I don't know medical terms, but even if that's the case, right? Those injuries tend to be 7 to 14 days type thing. So it's kind of in the Aller, will he play against Ohio State? Like, maybe he will, maybe he won't. I think. And what kind of sucks, and this is like I said before, the positives, right? He was warming up, so it clearly isn't like a season-ending type, or like a long-term injury. I guess any injury at this point could be season-ending, considering that they are only guaranteed one more game. But I think it's likely that he's not 100% if he plays against Notre Dame or Georgia. Like, I don't know if there's any way that you could not be able to go back in the game and then 10 days later be fully healthier. I guess I think it's technically 9 days later, right? Because it's Thursday.
Yeah.
So it would be 9 days later, be 100%. But it sucks. But also, like, I mean, it sucks. I guess that's just all I want to say.
This is the playoffs for you. I mean, it's just I guess you'd rather have a 75% Abdul Carter in than no Abdul Carter at all.
And certainly every team is battling injuries at this point, and we'll be getting to the games here in about first one's at 1:00, so in about an hour. So I'm sure there will be injury. I know Notre Dame lost a defensive tackle, one of their better defensive tackles against Indiana. Texas had some injuries against Clemson. So unfortunately these things happen. It sucks that it happened to Carter, especially early in the game, but we'll see what happens. And just overall though, I mean, I was coming on here every Tuesday watching the college football playoff rankings, just hoping that Penn State was going to be able to get that good draw. And then they do. They get SMU, to get Boise, and Penn State I mean, took care of business. You blow out SMU. I wouldn't say you blow out Boise, but you certainly win in impressive enough fashion. I know a lot of the talk to him on podcasts and just Twitter in general has James Franklin won a big game? What is your take on that? Has James Franklin won a big game?
Okay, yeah. Yes. Actually, this was a big game. So was the SMU game. It's going to be a look, the people saying James Franklin won a big game, they're just haters that want to keep moving the damn goalposts. And I swear, like Penn State can win the national title this year, and they'll still be saying, well, but he had the easiest path through the playoff.
Be like, well, they lost to Oregon and Ohio State earlier this year.
Like, they're going to find – they're going to come – or like, oh, they say they faced Georgia in the semifinal and they beat them. Like, oh, they didn't have Carson back. And, there's always going to be something. They're going to find a way to move the goalpost and say this wasn't truly a big win. No, these are two top 10 teams that Penn State just beat. And, say what you will about, Boise State comes from G5. And, SMU, it's ACC team, but they were just a G5 team a year ago. And their roster composition still like a hybrid between the two.
Sure.
But, still, those were big games. I mean, can you imagine what the reaction would have been? What would the headlines? What would fans be saying if Penn State had lost last night, or especially if they had lost at home to SMU in the first round of the playoff? I mean, I think you and I know the answer to that. I mean,
absolutely.
Just like it. So yeah, he's won big games. He's in the semifinals of the playoffs. Deal with it.
Just because Penn State was favored to win by what I think it ended up being 12 or 12 and a half, doesn't not make it a big game. And just like with anything else, there's varying levels. I'm certainly not going to sit here and argue that beating SMU and Boise State is the same as beating, if they were to beat Georgia or Notre Dame or Ohio State or whoever in the next round, each win gets more impressive. But yeah, I mean, Penn State's in the Final Four. They're in the college football playoff semifinal. This is, for the last 10 years, all Penn State fans have been, right? The focus has been playoff, get to be those Final Four teams. And Penn State was the lucky one that got a sweet draw, the same way that Texas got a favorable draw as well. And we talked about it when it happened. It's like, okay, Penn State needs to take advantage of it. And they did. And they did with Boise State was a little frustrating, but I think all in all, I mean, Penn State was far and away the better team in both games, and they won the way that they should. Covered in both. So,
and you know what, Pat? At this point, regardless of what happens next week, I think this season's been a rousing success. They made the semifinals of the playoffs, which is what I thought when I was thinking about, what the team's ceiling was this past off season. What would I consider a truly rousing success of a season would be if they got to the playoff, won a couple games, made to the semifinals. I would be satisfied with that. Now, obviously, now that we're here, though, of course, let's just win the whole damn thing. But if it comes to an end next week at the hands of Notre Dame or Georgia, especially if it's a close game, it's just of course, we'll still feel bad and all, but when we look back on the season, I think we'll consider this probably the most successful one in James Franklin's tenure so far.
Yeah, I mean, some arguments for 2016 for sure, but I mean, Penn State is one game away from playing for a national title like that. That is everything. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
So big games are not it's just a silly discussion that Penn State's in the college football playoff semifinal, and people are like, but did James Franklin win any big games? It's like, he did. He most certainly did. So, and we know that. Just wanted to laugh at that question. So, all right, Tim. I think let's talk about. I guess we really need to talk about Katron and Nick Singleton. Katron Allen, man, just coming back from the dead. I do feel like we need to give Katron his flowers, because I know on this podcast, I think it was going into, I don't know if it was the Maryland game or going into the Oregon game. I said that I don't think it should be like a 50-50 share at this point. I think Singleton should get more of the carries. And man, we all talk about like Nick Singleton struggles during the middle of the season with like his injury. Maybe Catron had some sort of injury too towards the middle part of or the early part of November, because he has just, I mean, ran all over Oregon, ran all over Boise. It was, as I said before, it was like a guaranteed 6 yards. It felt like he was like a player on like College Football 25, where it's like, oh yeah, I can just do like a play right here and just get the yards I need. Super impressed with Catron. So just wanted to give him his flowers.
Don't Catron is the best Catron.
What was that?
I mean, Dome Catron is the best Catron. I mean, it's now back-to-back games in a dome where he's gone for over 100 yards. Had 134 last night, had 124 against Oregon in the Big Ten championship.
Well, there was the SMU game too.
Well, he had 70 on the. Well, it wasn't in a dome. I'm saying dome.
Oh, back-to-back games in the dome. I got you.
In the dome, yeah. But yeah, it's, he also had a pretty good, pretty decent game against SMU. 70 yards on just 11 carries and a pair of touchdowns. So I mean, obviously he's running well outside of a dome too. And hopefully he can keep it up next week against Notre Dame or Georgia. And it's good to see Singleton. Like didn't have. I mean, obviously most of those 87 yards just came on one play, but it was arguably the most important play because it slammed the door shut on any upset hopes Boise still had remaining at that point.
Definitely. Very funny during the game. I remember this vividly. Literally the play before Singleton goes off for 58 yards, I turned to my friends and I was like, this needs to be a Catron drive. Like, stop playing around, get Singleton out of there, put Catron in. Like, this, no more playing this little game of make sure they both get carries. And then Singleton goes for 58 yards. So right in my face. Thank you to Nick Singleton on that. That felt good. That's just the exclamation point that we all wanted, I think. So, nice to have two very good running backs, and they both end with nice games. Singleton getting that long run at the end, and Catron just running all over the place. And it's I mentioned it before, but it's a shame that run that he had that got called back in the Salim Wormley holding call, because just ran a Boise State dude over and just kept going and had himself probably was like a 50-yard run or something like that. Certainly over 40 yards, but get called back. So still a great time. So shout out to both those guys. Any final thoughts, Tim, as we log off here and enjoy the New Year Day, the 2025 year, and some great college football?
Well, so far 2025 is a great start for Penn State football, and hopefully they can keep this fun ride for the playoffs going with a win in the semifinal next week. And if not, still, I would argue it's been the most successful season of James Franklin's tenure.
Absolutely.
At this point.
Yeah. All right. Make sure that you guys are subscribed to the YouTube channel. Please subscribe if you're not. 14 people are watching this live as we speak, and I know hundreds of you will be watching this video throughout the next couple of days. So if you hit this point in the video, please subscribe. It literally does nothing. I mean, you will find out when we're going live, but other than that, it really doesn't bother you. It's not like you're getting like tons of notifications. It does help us though with, getting the word out there about this podcast.
We're not political text spammers here.
And we're not taking, we're not taking your data. We're not taking your information. You're just simply subscribing. In your YouTube, a little thing will pop up in the right corner when we post a video or something like that. But other than that, you'll barely even know that you will have subscribed. So just do it because it helps us more than it hurts you. Make sure you're liking the video as well. That helps with getting the word out there and helps with SEO and stuff like that. Read our stuff at blackshoediaries.com as well. We'll have tons of content in the coming days as we go into another football game week. Penn State playing next Thursday against TBD, either Georgia or Notre Dame. I'm sure for a bunch of you who are watching this, it'll be after the game, so you will know. We do not know, though. So we'll be Georgia or Notre Dame. As always, thank you all for watching. We really, really appreciate it, and we will see you if the game's on Thursday. Tim, I think you and we probably will do a preview over the weekend. I feel like we can we'll get out for Monday. Does that sound good?
We can get something out. We'll have something out for you early next week.
Awesome. All right. We will see you guys then. Thank you as always.